Hello, I'm Mitch Fox, President and CEO of the Nevada Broadcasters Association, and I'd like to welcome you to this special edition of Nevada on the Air. We're up in Carson City during the closing days of the Nevada State Legislature, and we asked a group of lawmakers what they thought were the accomplishments and successes of this legislative session. Joining me now is Assemblyman Ozzie Fumo, who also happens to be my assemblyman in my district. And welcome to Nevada on the Air, Assemblyman.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. We want to tell our viewers that this is there's about 4 or 5 days left in the legislative session. So we want to sort of timestamp this and kind of look back at what you think were some of the highlights of the legislative session. What do you think?
You know, getting the teachers the pay raises that we promised them while we were campaigning was huge. I think hopefully that comes through, and I hope that Ways and Means and Senate Finance does find the money to get them the pay they deserve. I think if we can do that, that will probably be the number one highlight for me of this session. The number two was obviously Brooklyn's law. Was a child access prevention, gun prevention law that I worked on. I have a constituent who lives in our district. Her name was Brooklyn May Moeller. In 2012, I believe it was, she was killed when her neighbor, single dad, left a loaded gun where he keeps the Disney cups and cereal for the kids, and her 12-year-old friend shot her. Her mother had taught her to run away if you see a weapon, or she was shot in the back, blew out her chest, and it happened just as her father was coming to pick her up. So his father had to hold his dead daughter, or dying daughter, in his arms, and that could have been avoided. That tragedy could have been avoided had the parents just secured the weapon. So we worked for 2 years with the district attorney's office in Clark County on language just to make it a misdemeanor if a parent doesn't secure their weapon properly and a child gets a hold of it. Now, if a child gets a hold of it and causes injury or death, then the punishment could be more severe. You know, you could have a felony charge with that. It was known as Brooklyn's Law. It was AB 153. Like I said, we worked very, very hard. For some reason, leadership tied it in with 291, which was the bump stock law in the Sandra Howdige's bill, which was also a good bill, but ours was two different things. You know, one was precluding people from having the bump stocks, and ours was just child access prevention, securing your weapon. They went to the Senate Judiciary, and they got put in together. Our language was put into 291. As of today, I know it was work sessioned in the Senate yesterday, which we were very pleased about. And it's going to go to the Senate floor, I hope, today. We'll come back for a concurrence, and I hope we can get it to the governor's desk, because ever since I've met the Moellers, Brooklyn's been with me. You know, she was with me when I got sworn in. She was with me and her parents when we presented. My youngest daughter got married this session, and she was with me when I walked my daughter down there. I'm always with her. She's always in my head, and so I just hope we can get her some relief.
Wow, amazing. One last question, that would be, a lot of people are saying this particular legislative session sets up some issues for the next legislative session. Of course, there's a new school formula.
Right.
We have to look at some funding models and so forth.
Right.
So what do you think moving forward in the interim lawmakers like yourself are going to be looking at?
You know, that's probably the biggest thing will be education. I was on education in 2017. I was not on the committee in 2019. But I know in the interim, with leaders like Brittany Miller heading the way on that, she is probably the encyclopedia for teachers and education and what goes on in the judiciary. I know everybody leans on her and everybody relies on her, and so I hope she leads the charge, because the funding formula as it's set up now has been in existence since the 60s, older than I am. The new one will kind of mirror the old one for a session, and if that money works out to where they want to put it, it's all the money going into just a different bucket, is the way it's been explained to me. And if that formula works, then in the next biennium, the 21 session, though, we'll have it in effect and working. So, like I said, with leaders like Brittany Miller monitoring that and advising those in charge of how to put the money and where it should go, I think it'll work out well.
Very good. Assemblyman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate your time.
Wish you well.
Thank you, sir.
Joining me now is State Senator Scott Hammond. Senator, welcome to Nevada on the Air. Again, this is a return performance, I think.
Yes, it is a return performance. It's always good to be on air with you.
Thank you so much. And now we're in Carson City, and I just want to sort of time stamp this, that we're still a few days from sine die at the end of the session. So some of this information could be a little dated. But I did want to ask you, looking back on this legislative session, every session is different. Every session is known for something. What do you think this session is going to be known for?
Every session has a sort of nuance. It has a life of its own, and it also has sort of a stamp, a word you can use. And I think most people, when they look back on this is actually a very historic session. For me, I'm a Republican in the minority, and in the Senate, we're not in the super minority like they are in the Assembly. And we probably have a different perspective on the session, what bills we were able to have an impact on, what bills we got through to sign. I got 3 bills through this session and signed by the governor. But I think most people will look back on this as historic in the sense that it was the first time in the United States that a legislature was majority female. It's the first time we've had more females in a legislative body than any other time and any other place. This is the first state. I mean, we have been historic many times throughout our history, giving women more rights, giving women the right to vote. We've done this time and time again. Nevada has led the way, as have many of the states out in the West. I think this session will always be remembered as that first time that a female majority had control over the legislature.
Well, when you think about it, Supreme Court, in fact, our congressional delegation, just thinking of the numbers in my head,
right?
You know, we have 2 congresswomen, and both of our United States senators are female as well. So we're kind of, I guess, leading the way in gender equity in some ways.
Right, absolutely. And I think for those people who might have an issue with that, it's you have to remember it's not only the first time we've had a female majority, and as you stated, the Supreme Court, as well as our delegation to Congress, as well as here in our legislature. But these are very smart, intelligent women who are very passionate and very policy-oriented and really dive into the weeds about things. And so they're meant to be here, and they're contributing to the society just like everybody else, but they're doing a good job. They're doing a great job here, and they've earned their spot.
Now, one thing we definitely want to talk about, and that is SB 113. It was a bill that you sponsored on behalf of the Nevada Broadcasters Association, passed into law, signed by the governor. We're so relieved and so happy about it. Why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about it?
Okay, well, and of course, one of the things I want to make sure I mention is that the whole idea of being an official, an office holder, is really to try and find out what kind of policies we need to put in place that make Nevada a better place. This happens to be one of those really good bills because it was good policy. We were looking at Homeland Security. We're looking at the council we have together. We've put together this. You tell me the word again. It's the council, right? Commission on Homeland Security, and we had a position there that was held by the Nevada Broadcasters Association, but it didn't say in legislation or in statute that it had to be the president and/or CEO of the Nevada Broadcasters Association in case somebody left. And I think it was really important because what we did is we looked at the role that you play. You as the president, the CEO of the Nevada Broadcasters Association, or whoever that person might be in the future, and how important that role is to Homeland Security, to getting, to getting the word out to people, to being a vital part of making sure that people are informed, that you guys can help move things around during a disaster, during a situation where people may be in panic. Your role is vital, and so we wanted to secure that by making sure that whoever you now and whoever replaces you in the future has a seat at that table to make sure that Nevadans are in a better place in the future. And I think that's good policy. And every one of my colleagues agreed. That bill got out of the Senate 21-0, got out of the Assembly 42-0, not a single no vote in either of the committees. Nobody wanted to make any changes to it, so it was a great bill, but that's an example of how we get legislation, how we get good policy through the process to make lives of Nevadans better.
Well, Senator, on behalf of all of our radio and television stations in the state of Nevada, we're very grateful, very thankful that you sponsored the bill, and again, we really thank you that you went to bat for us, testified repeatedly, and really knew the heart and soul of our organization and what we can provide to Nevadans.
I tell people all the time, when I first moved here, you were the first people I've ever seen on TV, and years later I met you, and to be sitting at the witness table with you talking about a bill that really impacted policy here in the state of Nevada was a pleasure and was a privilege of mine, so I thank you for bringing that bill to me.
Thank you, Senator, so much. I appreciate your time on Nevada on the Air today.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Joining me now is Assemblyman Jim Wheeler. Assemblyman, thank you for joining us on Nevada on the Air.
Okay, thanks, Mitch.
We're taking a look back now. We want to let our viewers know that we're not quite at the end of the session. We have a few more days left. But looking back, what do you think this session is going to be known for?
A lot of people ask me if we're going to be known as, California East when this session started. I don't think that's the case. I think we're going to be the envy of California now.
Why do you say that?
Well, some of the most liberal policies I've ever seen are starting to go through here. And you'll see in the next 3 days the really liberal ones hit, because that's kind of held until the end.
Now, the governor, as we speak, vetoed a bill, surprising some people today. Tell us about that one.
Well, he vetoed AB 186, was the National Popular Vote bill, which would have assigned all of our electors in a presidential election to whoever won the National Popular Vote. And I'm really, really glad he vetoed it. I think that was a very good move, and I give the governor kudos for looking out for the state, because it would have just basically let 3 states run this entire country as far as federal elections are concerned. Nevada would have become a flyover state, and we would have given up our republic basically and become a democracy.
Now, looking at the next legislative session, there's a lot of people that have said you got some things done, but you also sort of teed up some issues that will have to be addressed in the next legislative session. What do you think those are going to be? What are you folks going to be looking at between now and then?
Well, you're going to see a bill come out in the next, I believe actually it was heard last night, on collective bargaining for state employees, for instance. Well, obviously the money isn't there for that, because by some estimates that's over $500 million a biennium if that bill passes, which I think it will. So I think what you're going to see, for instance, is that bill will go out and not take effect for 2 years, which saddles the next legislature with finding that $500 million. Also, you've got the Medicaid expansion that Governor Sandoval signed us up for, where the contribution from the federal government goes down every year. So there's I'm assuming around another $100 million there, and this is all before you add any more money in. So, yeah, the next legislative session is going to be a tough one money-wise.
Very good. Assemblyman, thank you for joining us.
Okay, thanks.
Joining me now is State Senator Heidi Gansert, who represents a big part of Washoe County, correct?
I do. I represent the west portion of Washoe County, about 135,000 people.
Okay, let's talk about this legislative session. What do you think it's going to be known for? I know a lot of people remark that the majority female, which is a big accomplishment, and you fit into that mix. How did that impact the session, do you think?
Well, I think it's been positive. I think leadership has been strong, and there's a different dynamic. When I started years ago, there were not that many women, and so some of the bills that are brought forth are different. We have some around sexual harassment and another one about equal pay. So I think those bills have been beneficial.
Let's talk about some of the things that you worked on, which is that school abuse bill that was passed. Let's talk about that.
That's right. Last legislative session, I brought a bill to make sure if there were allegations of abuse at a school or a school setting, that the allegations would be reported both to personnel, but also to Child Protective Services in each county. And with that, those allegations are investigated, and if there's a report that's substantiated, now those reports will be made available to parents and guardians. So what was happening is parents didn't know whether the allegations were substantiated, and if they were not able to get that information. So we've made sure there's more transparency, more accountability, and more transparency this session.
And how about the issue of renewable energy? That's something you worked on.
Well, Nevada has a huge amount of renewable energy here, and I think that we need to continue to be a leader on that front. And so we passed legislation to increase the renewable portfolio standard significantly. And with the geothermal, the wind, and the solar we have here, it makes a lot of sense.
On terms of school funding, and again, the formula is being worked on even as we speak. It's not quite sine die at the end of the session, but that's a big shift to the way the state of Nevada has funded public schools in the past, dating back decades, really.
Right. The funding formula that we're currently using is from 1967. So this is a significant revision, and it's going to make the funding much more transparent. So they'll take all the different sources of funds and put them into one bucket and then reallocate with some weights depending upon different types of children and their needs. So if you're an English language learner, there's a weight. If there's a child with disability, there's a different weight. So I think it'll be more transparent, and we're going to run that formula concurrently with the formula that we're using now, so we can test it before we actually put it into effect. So we'll have 2 years to see if it's really going to be equitable, or if we need to make some adjustments before we actually allocate the money using that.
Well, then the funding component will be a big issue for the next session then.
It will be. So right now, the plan is for just not necessarily flat dollars, but sort of the normal enhancements that you would see. And so I'm sure that education and the funding, as always, will be a significant topic for the next session.
Senator Gansert, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to see you.
Same here. Thank you for joining us on this special edition of Nevada on the Air. If you'd like more information about this legislative session, go to the Nevada State Legislature website and you'll find information about bills, about lawmakers, and what was accomplished during this legislative session. Thanks for joining us.